Building a data culture is cited as one of the biggest parts of the AI upskill. And certainly one of the key challenges that's been listed by CIOs around the globe. Why do you think that data culture and literacy is playing such an important role? And what do you think are the keystones for success or roadblocks to avoid for the executives leaving?
A survey of data leaders from Fortune 1000 companies. And we said, have you established a data and analytics culture? Last year, only 20.6% said yes. This year, it actually increased sharply to 42.6%. When we ask what's the primary reason, whether it's related to technology or is it related to people, process, change management, things of that kind, roughly 90% respond that it relates to people issues, change issues, transformation.
What are the areas that might be missing or that are critical focus areas when it comes to governance?
It's amazing. I was reading a dialogue today of people complaining that Europe has gone first and regulators are either going too fast or too slow.
So AI is becoming a geopolitical issue. It is seen as the enabler of the next wave of how we compete as nations.
We asked if there are well-established policies and practices in place within your organization. Only 42% said yes.
What do you think is the priority or priorities that the C-suite and board needs to be looking at today?
So often there's this disconnect between the capabilities that are being created and the ultimate business needs and business outcomes. So what I encourage organizations to do is to work very closely with business leaders. You know, the most successful organizations I see, for example, Jamie Dimon at JP Morgan got up there in front of all the stakeholders and said, you know, without our investments in data and AI, we wouldn't be where we are today.
What is the business outcome? And that's not just what makes your shareholders happy. What is the purpose of my business? What does that mean strategically vis-a-vis other competitors? What does this mean with my current capabilities, my culture?
Just like we've spent 10 to 15 years really ensuring that all our C-suites and boards are across the customer journey and the customer experience from beginning to end, we need to look at the same data lifecycle leadership across some of those senior roles in the business. And we're seeing it from the quality of data going in all the way through to the outputs that are starting to be produced by generative AI application. I think it was Air Canada that recently needed to honour some of the discounted pricing that was surfaced by one of the Gen AI chatbots.
And the chatbot was wrong, and it was fed on wrong data. And they were like, oh, this thing was hallucinating, therefore not my fault. Not my fault works in the old analog world. Not anymore.
Looking to try and bring together the concept and realm of data science and engineering with more human-centered leadership, strategic decision-making. I thought that you might have some insights to provide.
So I'd say first that it's a work in progress and that organizations should proceed with caution. The chief data officer role has really only been around for about 10 to 15 years. And as you pointed out, you know, in 2012, 12% of organizations had a chief data officer. This year it was 83.2%. And originally the role started off very much as a defensive role after the financial services crises of 2008, 2009, and then the analytics component was added in, and it's evolved considerably from a defensive role to an offensive role focused on business results.
None of them are created equal. I think you're going to see a very similar profile. So I've talked to a lot of the med tech type people. Next year, we're going to be saying quantum like we're saying AI this year, especially in healthcare. So are we going to call it then a chief quantum officer, or are we going to still use the vernacular and the umbrella of traditional AI? I don't know, because AI isn't just Gen AI.
What's the one thing that we should be doing as leaders across the organization to improve data quality?
I'm going to say delete, 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 delete. If it doesn't spark joy, you must delete.
What I'm thinking is centralize. I think that's the one thing for me in having as little data repositories as possible, and making sure that we scrutinize data coming in and out of those systems.
Efforts to improve data quality have been successful. Only 37% said yes.
It's not just creating a data map, which is like people are amassing these massive log files that are just like, look, I have a map of the stars. It's really provenance.
One of an organization as a producer of AI or Gen AI. And that's where you start hearing of risks like data poisoning or model poisoning, and also unauthorized access to LLMs and to data that is used to train these models. You have kind of a separate category, which is attackers using AI to scale the development of tools, to scale the effectiveness of their tools and their tactics. That's, to me, it's just kind of traditional hacking on steroids, if you will.
We asked, whether generative AI has the potential to be the most transformational technology in a generation, and 2/3 said yes. But we also asked, is there a need for safeguards and guardrails for governing generative AI? 99% said yes. I don't know what the other 1% were thinking, but that's a separate thought. But we asked the safeguards and guardrails for generative AI in place today. 62.9% said yes. So still a lot of work to be done.
I recently learned that there's 49% of the 8 billion people in the world going into elections this year. I thought each of you might have some thoughts on maybe some of the greatest risks or examples that you've seen around misinformation and deepfake.
One thing that is absolutely sure is that we're starting to see efforts to use AI, specifically deepfakes, to increase the effectiveness of some of the traditional attacks. There was a bank or organization, I would say, from Hong Kong, I think a few months ago, where a deepfake video or WhatsApp, I think, was used to persuade a finance leader to approve a transfer. I think the impact was something like $24 million. This concept of autonomous decision-making, or autonomy in general, like when can we see the situation where AI becomes autonomous and acts as us? And I think that's an area that deserves a lot of scrutiny and, frankly, regulations at some point, because it is full of opportunity and risk.
One of the big focuses today was to really get around C-suite silos and start to bring together functions to have what is an all-organization conversation. If you had 30 seconds with a peer, whether that's CMO or product or engineering, to discuss the future of Gen AI and data, what would you use it to, what advice would you give and why?
I'd say it doesn't matter whether you love AI or hate AI, it's inevitable. It's going to happen. So if you have to prepare for it regardless of your point of view. And it's going to be a significant technology transformation, at least the greatest that we've seen in the current generation, maybe for several generations. But ultimately, it's a tool. It's a tool for good or for bad.
With that, we've actually run out of time for this special edition of the Tech Seeking Human podcast. Until next time, I'd say stay curious.